Afternoon, everybody. Councillor Avery sends his regrets today, so he won't be attending. I'll call the meeting to order and at the beginning ask if there are any items on today's agenda where there's a conflict of interest or pecuniary interest. Nobody's indicated affirmatively, so we'll go on with the agenda, seeing that there isn't any conflicts. And there's one addition to the agenda that I have. Kaylin has added 12.4, a land matter. Is there any other additions to the agenda? And just to clarify that item 7.3, that'll proceed 6.1 when we get down to it. We'll go through the 7s first and then do 6.1 after we do 7.3, just to have better continuity of the discussion. Okay, so a motion would be entertained for adopting the agenda as amended. Councillor Simpson makes that motion. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Okay, and then we have 3.1, we have regular council meeting minutes of March the 11th. They were circulated in the package. Are there any errors or omissions, additions, deletions?
Move to adopt the motion, the minutes as presented.
Okay. Almost had to declare a tie there, but thank you, Councillor Holm, for making the motion. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and then we have 4.1. Kyle did up a bit of a response on some of the questions.
Good afternoon. So at the last council meeting, we had the Palliser busing agreement. There was just a few questions that came up. Do reach out to Palliser to get a little further clarification. One of the questions was how full are these buses? Are they up to capacity? Are they under capacity? Could we oversell seats? The answer I got is, on average, the buses are full 80 to 90% of the time. They don't want to sell more than 100 passes than what they have available. So the question of can we kind of sell more and that way have the buses full all the time? Can't do that. 100 passes is the max, but it looks like the buses are utilized quite full anyways, so that problem isn't an issue. What resources does Palliser have basically for providing extra busing with Coaldale expanding and whatnot? They don't have any plans to increase capacity at this moment. We are growing, but we're not growing at the level where we need another bus to go from 100 to 150 at this time. The province has looked into, if they did change the 2.4 kilometer radius, the increase in cost is quite significant, so they're not looking to change any of that at the moment. Final question was a little clarity regards to the 2.4 kilometers from the nearest designated school. So the best way to kind of explain this is an example. So kids have their choice of which school to go to. John Davidson, for example, is a Palliser school. If the child is closer to John Davidson and they go to R.A. Baker, they will use the distance from John Davidson rather than R.A. Baker to determine how close they are. So that way, they may be 2.5 kilometers from Baker, but they may be 2.3 kilometers or 2 kilometers from Davidson. They're going to use the Davidson kilometers. So that's how that's kind of clarified. Were there any follow-up on any of those or any further questions?
I have a question with your answer, what you just said about John Davidson School. I can understand if it's any other school, but John Davidson is a designated school for select certain type of people. Not everybody can go there, so would they still use that?
That's the response I got, yes, from Palliser.
As if there's 2 elementary schools, I can understand that, but not if it's a select school for a certain type of people. I don't think that's really fair.
Yeah, so They said John Davidson, since it is a school of choice, it would be classified as a designated school. That's how their formula works.
I
That's
would
the
question
answer I
that.
received.
It's not right.
Councillor Chapman?
Yeah, thank you, Worship. Two questions. Kyle, thanks so much for this report. And my first question is regards to mileage. So 2.4 kilometers is a provincial standard. The question I have to that is that 2.4 kilometers as the crow flies or best direct route, how would they determine 2.4 kilometers?
It's just like if you went to say go just distance from the school to the property, probably closest route, I'd assume.
Okay, thank you. My second question is, with your responses, would you be able to provide council with an update later on in the year as your 100 applications comes to a close, and then maybe in September provide council with a number of additions or requests for ridership that council could take under consideration?
Like based on how many people request a bus pass?
So yeah, so what happens is you'll between an opening date and a close and the first 100 that apply, then after the first 100, then you close it off. So it is the first 100 that apply.
Correct.
So if by mid-September you keep getting request after request after request, it'd be interesting for council to hear that.
Yeah, and just to follow up, like historically last year, I believe after the first 100, we had about 20 people on the waiting list. 10 got on, and so historically it's probably been about 120 people on average that have applied, but I'll keep track of those numbers again this year.
Maybe just one other one then. This position, is that more determined by Palliser that they would cap it at 100 because a third bus may be not warranted?
Yeah, it's the cost-benefit approach.
Okay, thank you.
I'd probably recommend that we would add busing to agenda in an upcoming joint meeting with Palliser, just keep the dialogue and discussion going, and that we have a great partnership with Palliser, and I'm sure with all the different irons in the fire, we'll have lots of reason to meet with them again in the near future. So maybe get administration to note that for an agenda item at an upcoming meeting, I would think. Councillor Simpson?
I was just wondering if Palliser could change their letter a little bit to make clarity that the people that previously were funded for already, like, so that are outside that 2.4 remain still funded that same way. That's where people, I don't know when this letter came out last year, a lot of people were confused about, well, am I still included in that? Am I still free for busing? And so I just kind of would hope that Palliser would make that adjustment on their letter, just clarifying that if you were already previously funded for busing, it still is ongoing for the next following school year.
You're referring to outside the
Yes,
2.4?
yes, because a lot of people had that question. They were scared that they wouldn't be funded anymore.
Sure, I can make that.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for engaging Palliser on getting some answers to this. And motion can be entertained to receive this for information then. Councillor Simpson, all in favor? Thanks, Kyle. Okay, and then we have a delegation there from the library, the chair, Tamara Waits, and her support group.
I bring an audience. Thank
Welcome.
you very much. Okay, so I am here today to take a look at the library bylaws, the Coaldale Public Library bylaws, which you received in your package. And does anyone have any questions or?
We do have them in the package, but we weren't really furnished with a copy of the previous bylaws, so you know of any, were there any substantive changes? Or?
No, there was not a lot of substantial changes. So we did streamline a lot of the words within the bylaws. We capitalized board. We basically replaced Town of Coaldale with Coaldale Public Library. So we changed some verbiage within the bylaws, but the overall flow of the bylaws, the content wasn't altered.
Any questions through to Tamara on the bylaws then? Councillor Simpson?
We'll make a motion to approve the amended Coaldale Library bylaws.
Okay, any discussion to Councillor Simpson's motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, that's carried. Thank you,
Thank you
Tamara.
very much.
Yeah, thanks for all your good work and
Thank you.
often and
Thank you.
okay, and then the library. You want to hear about who's gonna what we're doing with
Oh, yeah, I'm going to stay.
Kyle.
I'm gonna stay.
Kyle's eagerly angling for another job to do. So here, come sit by Tamara and make her feel.
Hi, I'm Tamara.
Okay, so under the Library Board Act, the town council must designate somebody or a firm to be the designated reviewer / auditor for the library statement of receipts and disbursements. BDO Canada previously did that last year, and however, they're no longer the auditor for the town of Coaldale. As a result, we have to look into making a change. Historically, the library board has always gone through an audit procedure, but it's not a requirement. Basically, council can designate somebody who has the experience and council feels comfortable with to do that. As a result, I'm looking to see if council would make the recommendation that they approve myself as the reviewer for the library board. There's no independence concern as I'm not associated with the library board. So I would be independent from that aspect. This way the town doesn't, or the library doesn't have to have a accounting firm do that for them.
Thanks, Kyle. And Councillor Jutman has a comment or a question?
Or I could make a motion if there are no questions.
Okay. Go ahead.
The council appoint Kyle Beauchamp, CPA, CA, to complete the financial review of the statement of receipts and disbursements for the Coaldale Library Board for 2018 and going forward. And going forward is?
Indefinitely until there's any changes or requests by council to make a change.
We'll just add that into the motion if that's appropriate.
I think it's quite clear. It's just after the period, probably. I don't.
Okay.
In my mind. Any other discussion?
If I could just add to this, will save the library between $2,000 and $4,000 annually.
Good. That's a good idea.
It sure is.
Okay, we have the motion on the floor. Any other discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay. There, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Okay,
guys.
enjoy the rest of your day.
You too.
Okay, and then, so we have item 7.3. Spencer, you want to speak to the Intermunicipal Subdivision and Development Appeal Board, please?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor and Council. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll keep my verbal presentation brief. I think a lot of the information that needs to be discussed is already in the report. Essentially, the Oldman River Regional Services Commission, in response to a number of changes that have occurred with the Municipal Government Act over the past year or two, have chosen to form a membership-wide subdivision and development appeal board that would be larger than the intermunicipal appeal board that we have currently. Our current intermunicipal subdivision and development appeal board consists of ourselves, Barron's, Picture Butte, and Nobleford, and possibly Colehurst as well. Yes, and Colehurst as well. And all of those members from our current SDAB have chosen to sign on with the Chinook Intermunicipal Subdivision and Development Appeal Board. So really, in essence, the biggest change would be that we have access to a broader potential number of board members. So if there is an appeal lodged, it's generally going to be easier to field an adequate number of panel members to sit on an appeal through the Chinook Appeal Board process. In addition to that, the MGA now requires, through regulation of the Minister of Municipal Affairs, that appeal board members and anybody acting on behalf of the board has to have specialized training. So the other benefit is that the Regional Service Commission is much more adept at ensuring that training is kept up and reporting the training and credentials to the Minister's office, which is now also a requirement than individual municipalities would be. So with those benefits comes a small yearly price tag of $500 a year for operational maintenance and ensuring coordination between the ORSC office and the Municipal Affairs office is ongoing in a productive and proactive manner. So unless there are questions, I'd be happy to recommend that the change be made for the town's benefit from the current intermunicipal board to the proposed Chinook Intermunicipal Subdivision and Development Appeal Board.
And thank you, Spencer. And I see Councillor Chapman's in the queue.
Thank you, Worship. Spencer, thank you so much for bringing this forward. One additional cost that would be borne by the municipality or the hosting municipality is that they bear the cost of the appeal?
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman. So the municipalities have always borne the cost of appeals that ORSC has helped run. We get invoiced well after all the action, so it's usually not seen as a major component of appeals that we do handle, but we do already pay a ongoing fee to the ORSC office on a one-off basis based on how long an appeal takes, how many members have to travel, things of that nature. So in this sense, the additional fee would be $500 a year ongoing for every municipality that participates, and that's above and beyond the individual per appeal fees that would be accrued by way of those appeals being run.
Your just as a follow-up, then your recommendation is basically what sort of the format we've been hosting or going with currently.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Chapman. That is my recommendation. There is, as I've mentioned, a small increase to fees, but looking at the other side of things, we could run our own board just in Coaldale. It would likely take more than that $500 a year in staff time and cost to maintain training and do all of the things that the regional office can do more efficiently.
All right.
I'll make the recommendation and the motion that administration, that the town of Coaldale become a member of the Chinook Intermunicipal Subdivision and Development Appeal Board, given the substantial benefits that the ISDAB offers.
Do you have any, can we have the motion and then the next part was the quorum part? On,
Is there a second part to that?
there is just wanting direction as to what? Go ahead, Spencer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are a couple of housekeeping items if Council chooses to pass the new bylaw. So the rescinding of the current bylaw is within the new bylaw. That's one point that can be covered. And there's an additional point where in the new bylaw, under section 5, it's indicated that 3 board members would make up quorum, and above that, just for sake of simplicity, 3 board members would be the regular number of members that would sit for an appeal in the town of Coaldale. However, that's completely at council's option. If you wished, you could have 7 or 9 or 11 or whatever you wish. From a process perspective, the items listed twice on the agenda, I don't know what you would wish, Mr. Chair, if you'd like to do the reading of the bylaw currently or leave that for later on.
Well, we can entertain the motion to adopt the recommendation then. And if there any other discussion on the recommendation that Councillor Chapman is supporting? Okay, so the recommendation is as outlined there. So we'll call the question. All in favor? Okay. And there's nobody opposed. So then you can maybe address some of the administrative detail in the actual bylaw than anything that's not already been said, I guess. Is there anything there? Just a quorum? Do we have to insert the quorum numbers in here?
They're already inserted as 3 and 3.
Okay.
quorum and regular size of the board that would meet for a town appeal. They're both set at 3 currently. So the question would be if council would like to have more than 3 be the regular number of panel members for an appeal that would be lodged in the town.
Right, so the bylaw as it stands already has a quorum at 3, so just,
I guess, Your Worship, just on that point, the other members would be endorsing or supporting the same conditions or requirements for number of people sitting on the panel?
Through the chair to Councillor Chapman, that is one of the few items that each council has autonomy over in terms of how the bylaw is structured. There can be a choice as to what makes up quorum, and there can also be a choice as to what a regular number of board members would be for a given appeal. So our current bylaw reads that quorum would be 3, a regular number of board members for any appeal would be 5.
okay, so there could be as few as 3 and as many as 5, which seems to work right now.
Correct, yes. So if there was a desire to have 5 be the regular number of members, there would just need to be a very minor amendment made to section 5(2) of the proposed bylaw to go from 3 to 5.
I might just say, I guess just from experience, that 3 has worked fairly well. I don't know, I think we only had one case where we could have, where 5 might have been, but for the most part, 3 has been quite a comfortable number to work with.
Okay. Councillor Holm?
Just a question, do we need to rescind our existing appointments and then reappoint to this committee?
Through the chair to Councillor Holm, yes, that would be one other item that I hadn't included in the staff report, but that would be the cleanest way of ensuring that everybody maintains their status as board members, yes.
All right. So does anybody want to sponsor first reading of the revised bylaw here, or where do we go from here? Councillor Holm?
I'd move first reading.
Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Okay. And then, does anybody care to sponsor second reading? Councillor Pauls? Any discussion? All in favor? And then we have to have a motion for unanimous support to have all 3 readings in one session. Does anybody care to make the motion for unanimous support? Councillor Simpson? Any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And that's passed unanimously. And then anybody care to sponsor third and final reading of the bylaw then? Councillor Chapman? All in favor? Okay. Then Councillor, so what would be the best motion then to have clarity for the appointments and that, to reappoint all the existing board members to the newly formed entity?
Correct. I don't know that we would have to rescind the previous appointment, given that it's not a bylaw, but I imagine it could be simply worded in the sense that any member of council and member of the public at large that currently sits on the ISDAB that's just been disbanded be brought forward to be the acting members that would sit on the Chinook Intermunicipal SDAB.
Okay. Councillor Holm?
I would make that motion.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, all right. There we go. Thank you, Spencer.
Thank you.
And we'll move on to item 9.1. And Lana kindly circulated the SEWA update. I was at a SEWA board meeting in Knowles on Friday, and I waited till that meeting to be able to provide the update here. It's pretty much good news update on the go forward motion of momentum of SEWA. They're in dialogue with at least one international financing company that's had a peek under the hood, and they're getting good response from that company, saying that there's a lot of interest in the private market as well. If it couldn't be done on public funding, that they're quite optimistic that the private entity would be more than willing to step in and do the project. And so then they're going out in the next few days for just a final request for expressions of interest on siting to other member communities, to see if other member communities of SEWA wanted to have one last crack at entering the beauty pageant for having the waste energy plants. So then within this document, there's a little bit more detail that'll be required for interested communities to provide legal land description and a little bit more detailed. So I'll entertain any questions if anybody has any. If not, I request receive for information. Councillor Chapman?
And I can make the motion, but the question is, are we still, as our name is still on the books for a site location?
Yeah, well, we answered the first time around when they requested willing site hosts.
I'll make the motion to receive for information.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay. And we have information items. It's 11.1 and 11.2. Anybody want to pose any questions with respect to either of those items? Pretty much, it's good. We've been doing well in getting some grant approvals, so that's always happy to receive those kind of letters. I'll entertain a motion to receive 11.1 and 11.2 for information unless Councillor Lloyd makes that motion. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, that's carried. And it appears that we've gone through the public portion of today's meeting, so I'll entertain a motion to go into closed session then. Six point one? No, we didn't. That wasn't on the agenda. Okay, motion to go in closed session then. Did I see that? Councillor Simpson makes the motion. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you, Nikki.